Hello, everyone. It's Lacey and Drew, and we are super excited to be here today. We are actually going to be doing sort of a mock but a real audit with our friends Donnica and Scott.
Yes.
And we are really excited to kind of review their property and help them get a better feel for some of the things, the possibilities that their homestead has to offer. Drew, anything you want to add in before we talk about?
No, I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Well, out of the gate, we're really excited about what you guys have going on. And just to clarify, we were a little curious. So it said 3 years on your property. Now you had 9 acres and then you recently, just a few months ago, attained another almost 15 acres, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And that first 9 acres, you've been there for 3 years?
Correct.
Okay. Awesome. And is that a family land or how long have you been familiar with this area?
Just for 3 years. We moved out here. We bought the property 3 years ago. That's where my shop is. So now my studio is on the property as well. And so yeah, we just moved to this area, Madison area, 3 years ago.
Yeah. Before that, we previously lived in Greensboro for 15 years. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's not all completely new. And were you on any kind of land in the city or what did it look like before?
Just a third of an acre. We had some chickens and we had a garden, but yeah, just a little corner plot, third of an acre.
Okay, cool. And to give us some context, you said you have a studio. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do? Sometimes knowing what your skill set is coming in is really helpful for us.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see if my skill set helps for farming, but I'm an artist. I do painting and sculpture.
Oh yeah.
So my shop.
Drew has a BFA in sculpture. So.
Oh my gosh, cool. Okay, sweet. Yeah. I do mostly welded aluminum sculptures. So thankfully I do weld. That does come in handy.
Yeah, it does.
Farm and such. But yeah, so I do. All my work is done on aluminum. So both the paintings and the sculptures. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
A lot of tools, but that's nice.
Yeah. All the tools come in handy.
I think homesteading is just like 4-dimensional artwork. So it makes total sense that you're an artist, right?
Yeah.
That's very cool. Cool.
Where did you go to school, Drew?
I went to Appalachian.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I went to Brevard College outside of Asheville.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it out there. Oh my gosh. It was beautiful.
Yeah. It was beautiful.
So you're just as much, you've been hippies for as long as we have.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. Okay. So when you moved to this property, it was because you wanted to expand your homestead or was it really, kind of a mix of different things? What was your mission?
A little bit of everything, but yeah, definitely wanted to just move out to where we could kind of, be a bit more self-sufficient as far as, just a big garden, whatever kind of livestock or animals we might eventually have. But yeah, that was definitely the plan the plan was to get out where I could have my shop out here, and then of course just be, like I said, more self-sufficient as far as garden, eating, all that stuff.
And the chickens are the gateway animal. So I'm curious, right? Was that motivation? Like you wanted to get more livestock and things?
Yes.
I think it was more health was the motivator.
That's true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we wanted to eat as healthy as possible, but then also just knowing where your food comes from is the best way to do that. So health was the original motivator. But of course, like you said, once we started gardening and had chickens, now it's like, what's next? We want to do all of it.
And we had, like we said, we had chickens in Greensboro, and they were fun. I mean, we had a blast with our chickens, and we had chickens out here, and then the coyotes also found the chickens. But now just recently, in the past couple of weeks, we've got chickens and a rooster again. So it's been kind of fun.
Nice. So do you have the chickens in electric fence or what are they in?
They're just we've got them in an old barn that's out here, and then we've just got a run that's completely surrounded.
Okay, so let's dive into like the overall property. So you have the 9 acres.
I could probably screen share.
Drew's going to pull up your map, and that can be really helpful. So you have the original 9 acres. On the 15, it looks like there's not really any development at all.
Nope.
No.
Can you guys see that now?
Yeah, that's great.
And the history of your property, was it farmland or what was here before you guys got here?
We just found out in the last few months that the property we're buying has been farmed before for tobacco for a while. Hasn't been farmed in
Probably 5 years.
probably at least 5 years.
Mhm.
But it had been a long time family. Like the both the part that we currently own and well, the original part and the new part are all part of a 180 acre original family farm.
Okay.
So we were learning from some of the family that the new part we bought, had been farmed quite a bit in the past, just like
Yeah.
kind of a family, kind of a giant family garden sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it looks like this picture from what we can tell. I don't know how old it is, but there's a good amount of clear area.
Did they log it at some point?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think they logged it to, obviously clear it. But then, there's a lot of buildings that are built with like that old school, true, like 2x4, like sawn lumber.
So that's up here, these ones.
Yeah. So was there 5 barns altogether? We want to take down the middle ones. One of the big things we want to do is take down those center barns. Like you can kind of see, there's sort of these perimeter barns. The furthest one to the left is my shop.
Okay.
But the ones in the middle are pretty deteriorating and kind of nasty. So we want to take those down completely, which would create, almost probably half an acre of like cleared, sunny area.
Yeah, it looks heavily wooded, your property.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a creek that runs in the very back of the property, and then another one that runs along the far side of the new property.
Okay, see where your drive is. Your drive, right? I'm pointing. The drive right here.
Yeah.
And then right here, what is this kind of clearing?
That must be the pathway.
Yeah,
Is that the cutoff?
It looks like there's a little road there.
Yeah, there is a cleared, like kind of and it probably is from doing some like logging and some clearing, I bet.
Okay.
There is a very clear path from, our house to the new property. And I bet that's where.
Right here. Okay.
With the lumbering and all that stuff.
There's no power line and no water here.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. And then in terms of terrain, it looks like the highest point may be in this back on the new section.
Yeah.
Sort of right here. Is that?
Actually, I think that's the opposite. I think this.
The opposite.
I'm pointing now too. Yeah. So the closest field to the house would be the higher one, and the one that's on the other side of those trees would be the lower one.
It's so interesting because in a permaculture mindset, the wear and tear would turn the other way. It would go this way to catch any water that's coming down. And what you can see from this picture is that your water is all going to run down really fast off of this brown spot at the top, this knoll maybe, and then down and off the property. So just noticing kind of the big picture of the water and how it moves off your property. You're probably a little bit more familiar with how it moves around your home. Can you describe that for us a little bit?
Our house, our house and the barns are, we're kind of on the top of not a very super tall dome, but we're definitely the house and the barns are on the top. Okay. And then everything else just kind of gently rolls back down.
Down to the holler.
Down to the holler. Yeah. There's that creek that runs in the back is probably 20 to 40 feet below maybe where the house is. Not very good.
This is the creek right here?
Yeah, the creek is kind of on that back line. The very back.
Sort of this direction. Okay.
Nope, the other.
Right here.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. That it kind of meanders around that back line.
Okay.
And so everything kind of slopes down to that creek. And even to so mainly slopes down to that creek.
Okay. All right. And your gardens are where in relation to your house?
Our garden right now is right in front of, I'm pointing again, but it's right in front of those barns that we're going to take down. Our current garden is
right here.
right there. And our current garden is about 15 by 30. But once we take down that barn, we'd really like to double that at least, and just have a good, because it would just create a huge sunny spot right there.
Okay.
And so I saw the one thing on your form was that you're growing enough food for 2 people. Is that right?
Yeah. Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So they want to. They weren't sure how much that means.
And you don't know how much that is.
That's normal.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of the plan, but yeah, we're sort of.
Yeah. So I would say, like, before garden expansion, one thing to do is really document how much food you're eating, so that you can document how much food, then you can work it backwards and how much you need to grow. It's very typical homesteader mindset of, like, if we have 100-foot garden, let's make it 300 feet. But you might not need that.
Or to plant the entire packet of seeds just because you have it. That doesn't
exactly. Yeah.
That doesn't make your job easier or more effective. It just means you have more of a job.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
So it's really smart to start at the end and know what you even really want from your garden before you start saying, well, there's more sunny spot. Let's just move the walls out, right? Especially since, you have a lot of extra pressure here where you're living versus when you were in town, because you're going to be dealing with deer probably more heavily, maybe not. But,
that was on the farm too, right? Deer.
Yeah, lots of deer.
All right, so we'll come to that.
We can't grow any flowers out here. Just
oh, really? Okay, so we'll come back to that. But the first thing I think we should talk about, and the major work when it comes to gardening, especially in North Carolina in July and August, what do you think of? Like, what's the hardest part of gardening in July and August?
What do you think?
What's hot? The watering.
Watering, probably.
Water. Good answer. Okay, so I'm glad you didn't say bugs. That would have been a harder thing for me to segue.
I was going to say bugs.
That's true.
That's definitely a challenge too. But if you're from North Carolina, you already know about the bugs. But the water is something that we all tend to kind of overlook, and it's one of our top things. Like, once you have you've harvested your water, you've kind of mastered your water, everything on your life and farm is going to be a lot easier. And to be truly self-sufficient, you have to know what your water situation is.
Right.
And I don't see any ponds or bodies or collections of water. Do you have anything that you're collecting water in?
Not that we're collecting, not yet. We'd like to get a couple of those, at least a few of those containers where we could, put the gutters on some of these barns and collect, the rainwater. That's definitely something we want to do. Other than that, we just have a well. We just run off our well.
Right, which is powered by
electricity.
Okay. All right.
Eventually a generator as well, just in case.
It doesn't flow free onto your property, I imagine.
Right.
So water does flow free onto your property. So let's take what's flowing free onto your property and maximize that. So that's where we always want people to focus their energies. And you have a lot of, since your home is at the top, if we were on the other end of the property, I'd talk about building a pond potentially. But since you're at the top of your property, I think those totes that you're talking about, IBC totes, you can get cisterns. You could build a pond at the top too, but you have so many roofs, you really should be harnessing the water off of those for several reasons, because you got water collection, but also because you'll be preventing it from eroding any potential areas that it might be causing erosion.
Yeah, right.
Many rooftops, I imagine there's some erosion. I don't know. It's always easier when we're on site to be able to I see it, there it is, but you probably know where you might.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
I'll say, like, looking at that, like, thinking about IBC totes and roofs, like, it's intimidating to think about setting up all of that at once. But if you just say, like, I'm going to do one IBC tote at the shop, because the shop looks like it's probably the closest to the garden. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Is the shop uphill or downhill from the garden?
Barely uphill,
Yes,
slightly uphill.
Very slightly.
Yeah, so you get some water pressure if you had the tote. Like, you might build like a little platform, especially if you're an aluminum man. Build just a little, like, just a little platform to get it 3 or 4 feet off the ground.
Right.
And that'll give you, when that's full, that'll give you all the water pressure you need for the garden.
Right.
And just start with one, and then, like, once you do it, at least the way I am, and I'm assuming you're probably pretty similar, is once you do one, you're like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. And now, before you know it, you'll have IBC totes at every downspout.
Right.
And then, then the question, like, becomes, we had another audit where the guy was like, well, I don't want it to be ugly. So then, you can start, like, covering them up if that's a problem, but just getting that functionality and understanding how it works with one before you do the next, it'll really help you there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a
a great idea.
Yeah, that's great. That's kind of what like we were thinking about. So yeah, that's good to know to just start with one.
Yeah.
Well, and the cool thing too is if you have one, once you harness that water where you're holding it until you release it, then, and this is something we have yet to do, but it's on my bucket list for sure. Then you can use that water to create electricity, because water is actually think of a dam, right? All of that is holding the water the way they want to. And since you're a maker and a doer, then I think you might, easily find some plans to start kind of coming up with a plan for that, which is, it's far more effective than almost any other natural electricity captivator.
Natural resource.
Yeah. Especially in our region, because we can't really do windmills in our region. Solar is great, but it's not as reliable. So definitely I would consider that just for a long-term future. It would be a fun project.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So looking at another thing to consider too, because you're talking about you wanted to expand the garden, and just to clarify, I would not expand the garden. I don't think Drew would either, until you figured out how to water that garden seamlessly without you carrying a hose around or buckets around or whatever your method is right now, or using electricity. The only electricity we would approve of is a timer on your downspout for your irrigation.
Yeah, so that's the next thing I would say is to, get the rain barrel set up. And then you should be able to hook up a very simple drip system to it. So are you familiar with drip at all? Have you messed with that at all?
I have not messed with it. I'm familiar with it though.
Okay. So Drip Depot, we should really have an affiliate link. But Drip Depot is one of our favorite ones. And it really just starts with a 3/4 poly pipe as the main highway. And then you just connect pieces in as you go to water different parts of your garden. But it's very, very simple. If you go on their website, a lot of times they'll sell these big packages, and you really don't need all that. It's really 3/4 poly to hose adapter. And you screw that down to your rain barrel, and you can turn it on and off, or you can put a hose timer in the middle of it. But now you're not what's that?
And that all comes from the rain barrel.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
The only thing you have to just mess with a little bit, and this is easy Google online calculations, is the height of the rain barrel. Obviously, the higher it goes, the more pressure you have. So you just kind of have to figure out, you've got this many gallons, you're going to use this much of the rain barrel. If you go half of the rain barrel, how much pressure will you have, and how high do you need to get it to have enough pressure to run those emitters? But those emitters run on a very little amount of pressure, so you don't need a lot. And Drip Depot, you can also write them and kind of say, hey, this is what I'm doing, what should I use? And they'll give you some suggestions too.
And so, we will write a lot of this up for you, kind of a review of everything, and send that to you with links and everything. So you don't have to remember everything.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be
taking
great.
notes.
Yeah, we are taking notes.
Well, our goal is to kind of fire hose you with information and then send you something that's going to help you kind of digest it in a more reasonable format. Because we're bringing 20 years of experience at you all at one time. So
I know.
Don't be overwhelmed.
Yeah,
one of the things that excites me, just because just knowing that you have an artistic eye, and that you have this opportunity here where you're taking the barns down, and a pond adds a really beautiful element to your landscape. IBC totes are great for functionality, but they are certainly not attractive, and ponds can be. And you don't have a water element so far that I've heard you talk of. So I definitely would encourage you to put in some small sized pond for water retention, and also because it's going to do so much for your environment. It'll sink water back into your ground before it runs off. So you really want to do this and catch any of that water as much as you can before it runs off your property.
Right.
Water is nutrition, right? It is life, but it also brings a lot with it, not like minerals and health, and it helps drive that down into your soil, but only if you're catching it and it's sinking before it runs away. And if it's running away, it's actually taking that away from your property. So a pond would be a really good opportunity to kind of catch that, hold it, and create even a like an aquaponic system, whether you want to grow plants or things, grow fish even, that will just add nutrient density to your property and diversity. So adding water is a huge way to attract pollinators and animals of all kinds that will just enhance your property and how it functions.
And the one thing you can do with that is like just think about like in one rain event, an IBC toad off of that roof is going to be full. It's going to be past full. So you could have like an overflow at the top of it that just flows into a pond, you know. And if you do that with all of those roofs, then you know you would have more water in a pond, you know, and like not a massive pond, like something little, you know, that's like you could
10
do
by 10, 10 by 20.
Yeah, something you could do with a tractor.
Okay.
Which you have.
Which we have, thankfully. Yeah.
Do you have a backhoe on the tractor?
We don't have a backhoe.
Okay.
But we've got friends now that live in the area that have backhoes.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Friends with tractors are even better than tractors.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, would you line that pond with anything, or you just?
You kind of got to decide which way you want to go. You could line it, and it will definitely hold water better. It's more expensive that way, and you have to deal with kind of the liner potentially getting punctured. It's like a whole process.
There are some shortcuts. Some people, you can find different recommendations online, but some people use old carpeting to line the pond, and it creates a mat that's less penetrable than just the soil itself, and it doesn't wash away. Or people will create a pond and then throw ducks in there. And because we're in North Carolina, you're going to hit clay, and that clay can be compacted and create a better liner, or natural liner, so to speak, that won't wash away as easily. You're just going to have to deal. If you don't hit clay and you just have sand, then you're definitely going to need a liner, but it's likely that you have.
But you can also design the pond in a way that it's like, okay, this pond most of the time will be full, but it might dry up, you know, in the hottest part of the summer or something like that, you know, and that's just like part of the overall design, you know. Just kind of think of it as like a wet weather pond.
And what you do regardless is flow that water so that it sinks more deeply, and you'll build your water table back up again. And a lot of times people do these kinds of things, and eventually they'll notice, oh, a spring has popped up on their property that had dried up because of the way that land has been treated, whether it's been scalped by forestry or whether it's been, you know, just runoff and erosion from farming. All of that kind of has evaporated. A lot of the springs that were there before are no longer there, but we can help restore them by doing this really simple thing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, never even thought of something like that. That'd be great.
It would be really pretty by the garden too, and out front of your shop. You know, like yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah, another great place to have a little sanctuary. And you did say you have a few of those already. So
we've got plenty of sanctuaries to sit and do nothing. So.
I love that. Yeah.
You're ahead of the game there.
It's counterproductive, all of our peaceful spots.
Yeah.
That's the point of it all.
No, listen.
Another spot over there.
So much happens when you sit and watch that can't happen otherwise. You know, I mean, I think
very true.
We feel busy, and that makes us feel like we got something done. But yeah, those sitting spots are probably more valuable than you know.
Oh, we love it. Yeah, for sure.
So what are you guys thinking as far as like perennial plants? Because I feel like that looks like a really nice area for like a little small orchard also.
That would be really cool. Yeah. The new space or the?
Yeah. So if you have like this, have this garden here, and then we take this building out, right? That's what you're talking about, taking out?
That one in the middle.
Yeah. So then you have like this whole green space.
And is north oriented the right way on this?
Probably.
So north is up and south is south?
Yeah. Probably,
yes. Yes. Okay. So the only thing you'd want to consider if you're going to plant that kind of thing is you just don't want to shade out your garden. So it doesn't look like if south is down here, if you planted an orchard at the top part up here, or a row of trees even, it would never block your garden from getting the sunlight. Right.
And I feel like some kind of like semicircle around your garden, you know, something like that could be really pretty. Like, don't think about straight lines are for like mechanical equipment and mechanical harvesting. So like if you're not going to be in there with like a harvester, you don't need straight lines. Think of zigzags and spirals and soft turns. That's
right.
Or of how nature works.
Well, and following your natural footpath. So a lot of times, if you look out into a field with cows, you'll see the footpath looks anything but straight, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going along the contour, right? They're going to follow the fastest way possible. And we as humans tend to do that also, or take the shortest route possible. Right. So you do two things when you're mapping out your property: is you can kind of make yourself behave in a different way, or you can follow yourself and follow those natural paths and make your farm feel very natural. And there's nothing wrong with changing. If you want to direct yourself around, to meander around and make your eye see different things, that's okay. But just be intentional about how you set it up, and don't just feel like, oh, they're 10 feet apart and 10 feet apart, in every, which is how we tend to think, because we tend to mimic now industry, because that's what we see acres and acres and acres of. But on our homesteads, that's not, that we're not limited by that, nor should we be, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that could be an additional element, artistic element.
Yeah, absolutely.
Design.
And are you guys familiar all with like guilds, like permaculture guilds?
No.
Okay, so that's like, it's mimicking nature in the way that, like, when you look at nature, there's different levels of plants growing. So you have like, I guess in some ways it's like fungus growing. You have root crops, you have canes and vines and shrubs, and then trees, understory trees, and then overstory trees. Mm-hmm. So when you're planting your orchard for a homestead level, you can do the same thing at every tree. So every tree would have like all of those elements kind of surrounding it. And if you Google like permaculture guilds, you'll find a lot of information on that.
Our favorite resource is Gaia's Garden. We'll put a link for that in there. It's a book, and it's just been around for decades, and it's hands down the one that we turn to the most. The other beautiful thing about those stacking systems is that you're creating symbiosis, so that you have the layers underneath are actually supporting the growth of things up top, and vice versa, whether they're attracting pollinators or they're tapping into minerals in the soil. Creating a mulch layer. It's just an effective way to use your energies one time instead of multiple times, because you're planting at once and potentially walking away, and for years having a turnaround. You can keep enhancing it and growing it. And, as things grow, they'll start to shade one thing out, won't grow anymore. And then, it's just a really beautiful way to kind of take what nature does automatically and make it work for you in a really beautiful way.
And you end up with, like, if you take that system and then like multiply it with lots of different trees, you end up with what's called a food forest. So it's like forest that you planted, and it is landscaped beautifully, and probably like, in my mind, connected to that pond and connected to your annual garden, and like you have this whole, like, in that little space right there, you have more food than you guys need. It's like and it gets really, really, really pretty as it matures.
Okay, that's awesome.
Before you plant any trees, though, definitely plan for your watering, because you don't want to put money into those kinds of expensive inputs and not plan to have watering set up, especially in its first and second year. Once they get established, you want to pick plants that are going to be okay drought tolerant wise, but you don't want to, that first year they're going to rely on you, and that even that second year. So make sure you're set up for success with that watering system ahead of time.
And we'll give you a list of like plants that, like, natives that we suggest, and then you can look at that list and then kind of pick your favorites and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome.
Yes, I was about to ask, what do you recommend? So
it's a long list.
Okay, cool. Good.
And adding to that list, I mean, we like to give homework assignments, and one of my first homework assignments is because you specifically say you're interested in medicinals and things like that. I really highly suggest you deep dive into your property where you are and know the forage. And that can mean grasses and other things that are just popping up in the grassier areas. Letting a section of your property that's already grass just grow up and see what comes there. I think you'll be surprised at what you already have just naturally there. And then really getting to know your woods and understanding what trees you've got growing, what grows underneath them. All of that kind of thing. I think really becoming clear, and this is a years-long project. You're not going to do it in a week. I actually generally encourage people to start with maybe 2 or 3 plants a year, and not just get to the point where you can identify them in every season, but also to where you know exactly how to use it if there's something functional that you can do with them in your own kitchen. So that I would definitely say is probably a top priority, because there's no sense trying to grow things that, if you turned around, there's something you're not familiar with that's growing on its own. Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times that happens. And it's just a matter of us knowing, oh, look, this property is so abundant. It already has what I need. I don't have to work so hard. You just have to communicate a little bit.
It looks like you guys is it mostly oaks and hickory?
Yeah, it looks like deciduous, not evergreens.
Yeah, there's a lot of hardwoods. The left side of the shop, there's quite a few pine trees, but it's mostly around the house and further is a lot of hardwood trees.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm not really great at picking out which trees are which, but they are a lot more hardwoods as you get further from the road. You get more of the hardwood trees and less of the pines.
Nice. Okay.
And you had said that you want to get donkeys? Is that what I saw?
Yes.
Yes. We need a donkey we need either what do we say, a donkey or a llama?
Or llama.
Oh, and then you said or 1 or 10. So let's plan for 10, because I think that's
let's do it.
Okay, so is there any fencing around your property at all? Like pre-existing?
No. Currently just around the garden right now. Yeah. But no, not like livestock fencing.
Okay. And is that something you're thinking you want to do? Have you thought about where you would put fencing if you put it in?
Eventually, yes. I think we had said possibly in the in the other
new to you.
Land.
Yeah.
That's kind of, possibly on the table as far as, that's where any kind of livestock could go. Obviously, like you were saying, water would be a major, just make sure everything's got water, to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, there's kind of like so much area over there. It's almost like, well, what do we do with it all?
Yeah. What was your intent when you bought it? Was it just to kind of keep it protected from somebody else taking it over, or did you have a vision? Yeah, that was what it was. Yeah.
It was just the way it fell in our lap is pretty miraculous. So we just knew we could not say no.
Yeah.
So that's why we ended up with it. I mean, and we did want to expand anyway, but we thought that was going to be like 5 years from now.
Well, you guys have grass-fed beef, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the thoughts.
That was one of our thoughts. I grew up on a dairy farm.
Okay.
So in talking to my dad, of course, he's not doing grass-fed anything or organic anything, but he made it sound like the cost to get started wouldn't be worth it. It would be better just to get in relationship with somebody else who's growing grass-fed beef.
Like yourselves.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there's a lot of different costs and profits that are not all necessarily financial based.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it brings you happiness and joy, like that's way more than the money aspect of it.
Right.
I'll say like having no perimeter fence around it is going to be your most expensive cost. Right. So that's like one that, you'll have forever and takes up the value of the land and everything else.
By putting in a perimeter fence.
By putting in
Right.
You'd have to determine what you want to do. So the truth of it is, if you wanted to lease the property, that's going to be a major hindrance for somebody being able to come in, because very few people want to pay to have fencing installed on somebody else's property.
Right.
So even if you did want to lease the property, that would be something you'd really have to consider doing. If you wanted to lease a property to somebody with cattle, the fence that you'd have to put in for that is much more minimal than to somebody who wanted to put in goats, right? Like a goat, you're talking about, I don't know, around this property, that's like
a lot,
$100,000 worth of fence potentially. Yeah. So,
right.
And then the other thing you just want to consider is, if you're going to do it yourself, the accessibility of this back property. And, like, you're obviously going to have to move. Well, I would think move the animals through the front 9 acres, potentially to get to one of these barns, at least sometimes, not all the time. But there's going to just have to be an accessibility point, which you do have a nice path, it looks like. Yeah. So that would just be probably where I focus.
And it would depend on what animals. Like, if you're doing a beef herd, there's really no need to bring them back there. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing if you're going to do a dairy cow, for yourself, even, you don't want to have to go all the way down there. You'd want like some kind of laneway.
Right.
Back to the house. So it's just like, if you're just doing cattle, like Lacey said, you could do high tensile perimeter fence and probably like 4-strand, and that's not so expensive.
How much do you think it would be to do this?
I don't. Do you know what the distance is around your perimeter?
Well, this is 15 acres.
Yeah, it's hard to know.
I don't know.
I mean, probably what's clear.
I'll be right back. Sorry.
What's cleared we are estimating is about 7 acres, because what's wooded on that property we probably want to keep wooded.
Gotcha. Okay, so like where it shows as dirt right now, is that still dirt or is that grass now?
There's some saplings, like it's not dirt, but they're very small trees. And
you have a brush hog. Are you planning to kind of keep it maintained with that?
We actually are leasing it for 4 years to a guy to grow corn. So he's going to clear it for us.
Okay.
Agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is he growing like, do you know what kind of corn he's growing?
I do not.
Ear corn or sweet corn or?
Oh yeah. Like food for like silage.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would be a little bit cautious about like additives and herbicides and things like that.
Right. We have all that in our contract about what we don't want.
Good.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
Like a toddler. Poor planning.
Oh,
No worries.
What were we talking about?
So if you have 7 acres of like grazable land, if you think about a cow per acre, like that, that's pretty good. You could probably, starting out, looking at like the quality of that forage, is probably going to be a cow per 2 acres. So, and it's the kind of thing, like as you go, you can improve the pasture where you could have like 3 cows an acre. But I would start low and work your way up. Other than like the expenses of perimeter fence, water troughs. If you're going to do like a regenerative style of grazing, then you have like fence posts and reels and things like that. But there's not a ton. Well, then the other thing would be hay.
Right.
And that's like, depends on how many cattle you have. So, I mean, there's not a ton of huge expenses. I guess is what I'm saying.
Time is probably the most.
Time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely time.
But to be able to grow your own beef that, you harvest on your land and it goes in your freezer and never leaves the property, I think that's pretty cool.
But I feel like the 4-year wait is actually great, because that gives you time to focus on this 9 acres.
Exactly.
And really kind of, figure out what you want to do. You could get a cow easily and keep it in the woods and really maybe even clean out some of these woods. It might be worth having somebody come out. There's a small lumber guy in our area that did our property. And he essentially cut out all the biggest stuff. We saved a few specific like oaks and hickories. Because we're really trying to reinstate this like oak savanna kind of thing. Now it's a pretty expensive thing, but you have a tractor, so you have an advantage. We do not have a tractor. So, he came out and he took what paid for his time here, essentially.
Cool.
And a little bit more, actually. We made a little bit more, and that helped us pay for some mulching.
Yeah, we logged like about 7 acres, and
okay, cool.
We had some decent trees, but we essentially made about $4,000. And we turned all that around and put it into a forestry mulcher, and we still need to spend about another $4,000 to get it to where we want. So to put it like, what they leave behind is a giant mess, but the end result would be like grass growing with like massive trees and livestock grazing underneath it. So that's like what we're working towards, and it's it'll be beautiful when it's there. But yeah, if you have old oaks and you're open to that idea, that's definitely something to explore.
And fencing this part of the property in with a high tensile would be a relatively low cost to get started with the fencing and kind of work with that. I think alpacas and I'm pretty sure donkeys would stay in that also.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have some leeway on the fencing that you can put in.
You could kind of just like take from this corner. That's the driveway right there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could kind of just go like that, straight across the fencing and then go down and around and just kind of think of like this area as what you're going to work on.
Right.
We really don't recommend putting in, unless you want to put in a perimeter fence. It's really the only exception. A lot of people will go in and they'll put in like permanent paddocks, and it's like, no. You want to put in like the minimum first.
Right.
And I mean, generally we even suggest just getting a couple of the nettings and using those so that you can move them and really see where you want that fence to be permanently, because you don't. Right. We've redone fence that we, laboriously put in the first year we moved in, right? And it's not fun, and you feel like you're wasting money, and it's just, having something mobile really gives you the feel of the land without committing to something that's actually not really a great idea.
That's a really good idea.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this all looks really exciting. I feel like you have a ton of potential. And the other thing, fencing though, while we're on the topic, we did want to talk about the deer situation. Yeah. So the first thing you want to do for your garden, because you're doing that this year, and especially if you decide to move in, put some perennials in, I recommend for sure blueberries this year. I would put in several blueberry bushes.
Yes, we would love to
do that.
And then there's a deer fence setup that we have. Where did it come from, this idea?
It's Premier One has it on there.
You can buy the package of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll include a link, but it's sort of like an X. 2 wires on one side and then one in the middle of those, about 3 feet away from that. Maybe not even that far, but they're hot and the deer cannot figure out how to get through or over them. Right. And this is the only thing that's ever worked for us. And we last year, maybe it was about this time, maybe a little longer, a year and a half ago, we had finally installed this in the area. We have our orchards in, our guilds in, and our gardening area. And it is transformed in the year. I can only imagine what our place would look like if we'd done it 12 years ago, but live and learn.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this is a really incredible thing and it's very inexpensive.
I would say if you're planning on doing livestock, like spend a little bit more money on fence energizer so that you can use it going forward with livestock also.
Okay. Yeah.
The way we have ours is we kind of have like a home base for our energizer inside a barn where it's like stays dry and doesn't get weather. And then everything kind of branches out from there. And we run the deer fence and all the livestock fence off of that.
And any netting too. Yeah. We just clip into that. So
does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, thankfully we've got lots of great electricity in the shop, because there still is some, of course, for the welders and whatnot, but there's a lot of like large, electricity that can come from there. So
yeah. And all the energizers that I know of just run off of 120. So it's not,
that's easy.
You don't have to have like massive electricity for them.
Oh, okay. That's really easy then.
Yeah.
Cool.
What other questions do you guys have?
Well, we were going to ask you, do you guys do anything or know much about mushrooms? Because we have so much shade out here. We thought it would be a great opportunity to crop some mushrooms.
You could certainly try. Yeah.
We've done a lot of experimenting with mushrooms, and I would say like a lot of failing with mushrooms.
Yeah. We're probably not the ones to give you a ton of advice on mushrooms. They are fun to try. I think we've had more success foraging mushrooms than we have with actually propagating and growing the ones we want. So I don't think it's not worth the effort. And a lot of people are very successful. I think we don't tend to be super follow the rules kind of people. So when we look at the directions, we're like, yeah, this will work, and every year I would say we try something different just to see what happens. But I wouldn't put a ton of money into it. I'd just play with it at first and see how you like it and how it does. I think one of the main things is to really find like a low point that tends to be wet all the time or most of the year.
Yeah.
And something that you are very close to water so that you can water that.
And very close to the house so you can keep the squirrels and stuff from eating your mushrooms.
Right.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say like with mushroom tools, they make a special drill bit that has like a bump out. So you get like the attachment that fits in your side grinder, and then you can drill into a log. And when it like hits the end of the drill bit, it like pulls out. So you can go real fast at making like plugs in logs or whatever, like that. And that, I want to say that total, like the adapter and the drill bit was maybe $20 total.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, wow. Okay.
like that's well worth it.
Right.
Because we've tried just using like a regular drill bit, and that's a pain in the butt.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, I would say like try like 5 or 6 logs and see how you do. And if it's something you like, then you know you do have a lot of woods that you could expand that into.
There's a really great resource for, maybe you already know it, and I can't remember the name offhand, but we'll include it in your notes for we get their catalog every year, and they give really good explicit directions in their catalog. It's just escaping me what the name of that business is.
The Sowed True Seed, any chance?
It's not So True Seed. They just do, they only do fungus stuff. They only do.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I'll find that. I even saved their catalog just because it's got such great information in it. But yeah, so that's a great question. And I think your property definitely leans in that direction just because of all that shade. But those are the keys that I think you need to think about in advance.
Okay, cool.
What seeds are y'all starting right now?
So my seed order, I actually waited late. So it isn't even here yet, but I started a bunch of things. I save a lot of seeds. And currently, what just popped up, I saved some wild indigo from a friend, and it just popped up yesterday after 2 weeks in the thing. Yeah, I think that a lot of what I put in is like long-term, it's taking longer to germinate than the traditional things that I would be planting right now. So I'm like, oh no, none of it's working, but it is coming up. Rue is the other one that's popped up. Nigella, which is a really fun floral, and actually black seed. I forget, it's got a medicinal quality that people are really after these days, I think, for hormones. And then some broccoli and some other greens and things. And actually yesterday, I moved a lot of things around because I had spilled some seeds in the grass, and I found a little patch of lettuce growing in the grass. I was like, oh, so I dug it up and I kind of pulled them all gently apart and planted those out. So there's a lot of things kind of moving around and going in. We did that with garlic too. There was some random cloves of garlic that shot out, and I just pulled them out and pulled them apart and stuck those in the ground. We already had garlic growing, but
we're leaning more towards perennials this year than annuals. Like I feel like every year we kind of lean more perennial.
Right. Now that the deer aren't destroying everything, we're more motivated to going there. But yeah, no, we have a big seed order about to come in, and I'm really excited. Cool. I do probably about 50% flowers and herbs, and then 50% actual veggies.
Cool.
So I think one of the things I will say too is we mentioned on here a little bit, you know, where is your community? Really dive into that. You said they're mostly probably in Greensboro, right? About 45 minutes away. Right. Which is totally fine, you know, especially if you can get them to come out to you regularly. But the community element is huge for us. So when we're talking about our veggie garden, I'm taking into account that we have a veggie farmer as a part of our food club. And so I don't plan as much as I would if it was just us growing for ourselves. Right. And actually never, ever plan to be in the scenario where we have to grow all our own food. So part of what we cultivate is a community of people that, you know, each bring something different to the table. When we carry the weight of trying to provide everything that we could potentially need for ourselves, we tend to do it in a panic mode. And we overproduce one thing and kind of forget about the other things that we really want, you know, like we look past it. We're like, oh, and we've known, you know, in the last few years, it's been even more than normal, but the panic mode of like, okay, I need to move out and I need to do this all myself. And it can be really debilitating in the long run. At first you start to feel really good about yourself, and then you get to August and you're like, it's so hot and my garden's dying and there's too many weeds. And then, you know, slowly but surely we also see the people who jumped in really hot and heavy over the last 3 years are starting to kind of be like, okay, I'm selling this property now, because doing it alone is just not feasible for any of us long term. So I love to garden, and I try to focus more on my love of it than on my need for it, because I can get overwhelmed with the idea of how many beans do I have planted and, you know, all of that. So you just have to know when you're going into something, what your intentions are, and really set it up in that way, because a garden can be, like Drew said, you could make that 50-foot row a 300-foot row, and by the time the season rolls around for tomatoes, they're all rotting on the ground because
there's a reason.
What are you going to do with all of that?
There's a reason there's that saying, a long row to hoe.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
That's right. And in North Carolina, we are not a place where you can just grow a 300-foot row and you have more. That's not how it works. You just have more to do because you are dealing with weeds and you are dealing with pests and we're generally have enough water, so that's not something that we have to complain about. And heat, we have plenty of heat in the long season, but we need to be very careful about how much time we put into our gardens, because it can be like you can only eat so much lettuce, right, unless you're selling it, in which case that's a whole nother bag of like stuff to figure out and work to do. So so that's my advice is, maybe really focus on one crop or one thing that you want to offer, because that was the other thing is you did say you would love to make some money off your property, which I think is a really good idea to have in your vision. And where was I? I'm trying to pull up the right page here. You had a pretty long list of things that you wanted to offer and do. And I would not say don't do that. I think diversification is really, really good. And I would commit maybe 1 year to each of those different things. I can't find the list. But is there one thing that you feel like is the calling you more than any of the other things on the list?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say there's like a first thing or a last thing. I mean, I think right now they're all kind of on the board and up in the air.
Just interests, general interests. Okay.
And they're all just all different possibilities, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have farmers market with produce. That's great. I would give that, don't say I'm going to do that this year. That would be a lot of.
So if you're going to do farmers market with produce, the garden needs to look completely different. So that's that would be like what we were advising is kind of more of a homestead garden. If you're going to do it for produce, it needs to be like a market garden. And that's like planning it for a business and like that. And that's all you do, like it's its own animal and I would really view that as a business. So like, unless you want to be veggie farmers, like as your main source of income, like you might be able to supplement a little bit, but that's a pretty competitive market.
Well, but if you're going to the farmer's market and you're selling, your overage of tomatoes and your overage of kale and your overage plus the other things you have on your list, that's a totally different way of approaching things.
Yeah,
I think that's totally fair. Do you all have a name for your homestead?
Yes, Harris Haven.
Oh, I love that.
Love it.
Okay.
Got a little aluminum sign that I made out there in the road and everything.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, that's amazing. Household items such as laundry soap. Yeah. So all of this is really great. So I think
I'd say that would be probably the first on the list, at least.
Those are things we already do.
Those are things we kind of already do. So just doing a little bit better job of that, like the stuff that she makes, already for our home and for deodorant and toothpaste and all that stuff is one of the things that's on the list of,
those are
ways to create some income off the property, kind of.
And especially if you can grow like additives for that, like medicinal plants and different things to put in there, like that's really a fun one.
And so then just to go down the rabbit trail of like marketing, what would be the main ways that you hope to get sales?
Well, this has been we've been talking about this. So
I mean, it started out, of course, just with Facebook, with our friends, kind of like, just getting the friends we do know that are and then just, one of the big things is going to be finding out the people that really want to do the more natural stuff, because the person that just buys degree is not going to want like the natural deodorant, basically. So I don't know. There's still a lot of thought that needs to go into like how we're going to fully market it. Yeah, of course, start with friends and family, like everything else does, and then get some of those people to tell us what they think about it and all that.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like you're on the right path. I'm excited about that. I think, like Drew said, using the things off of your property in those products, I think is going to be a really incredible option. And then also thinking about what you're planting and what you're growing, just in terms of your end result being, okay, I want to make these products, and these can be a piece of that. I think it'd be smart to kind of lay that out a little bit.
And I saw on the end of the list there, recreation cabin. Like we have.
Yeah, that threw me a little bit because it's very different than everything else on the list. But I like.
Yeah.
That one can be really fun too. I would say like things to consider is like, do you want strangers on your property? And like, do you want them to be able to see you? Like, maybe you can locate a cabin at the other end of that new project.
That was kind of the thought.
Yeah,
So you've got road frontage here. That would be lovely.
Yeah. And there's another creek. There's two creeks that kind of intersect right at the back corner. So there's a creek that crosses the road there. We're thinking like maybe putting a little cabin or campsites with a bathhouse.
Yeah. Is this a driveway? This line all the way?
Like a logging road.
Yeah, it's a bit grown up. It's a bit grown up now, but yeah, that's definitely access to Missouri Lane right there. So yeah, it could completely be a separate entrance, and they wouldn't have to know where we are.
Yeah.
So with that, just like thinking about like when you start to do it, it's kind of like any other marketing, like who is going to be the ideal person that stays there, and like plan the whole thing around that would be like what I would encourage you to kind of think about that whole experience.
Well, and also how urgent is it? Because residual income that's coming in without you working is a really nice thing to have.
Right.
And so I actually would consider before all these other things, not that, you're going to do those naturally anyways, but when you start taking orders and you start like scaling that up versus just a little bit extra every time you make it for yourself, it's a big deal, right? It's a lot of planning and a lot of execution, and a lot of marketing. But for something like the cabins, once that kind of gets rolling on its own, you have this kind of backdrop of money coming in without you having to recreate the wheel every time. So just, be thinking it's like harnessing that water versus, relying on electricity, so that's what I would actually move that maybe up to the front of the list, just for the sake of like, if I'm thinking about investing my time and money, it's sort of like the perennials. Like I would encourage you even this year or next to really not do a garden at all and really just put perennials in the ground. The sooner you get the perennials in the ground, the greater your return.
Right.
And the cabins are going to be the same way. So it's like financially advising you, but not with money.
Right. No, that's a really great point to think about for sure.
All right. Well, any other questions before we hop off the call?
Gosh, I guess not, unless there's anything you can think of.
No. I mean, I feel like we could ask you guys questions.
Yeah, we could probably ask you. Well, we could be here for like 5 hours, but
Well, you can feel free to bring those around again if you think of them later.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you so much getting on the call with us today and putting some faith in us to listen to us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it very much. Drew, what kind of metal work did you do?
I did primarily steel, concrete, and handmade paper. So like kind of put those together. But yeah, it's been a while. Now I just make farm stuff.
Farm equipment.
farm sculptures,
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Very cool. All right.
Well, we would love to come out and see your artwork and stuff in real life someday.
Yeah, we'd love to have you guys. He's sort of a gourmet, so we'd have you guys for dinner.
Oh, you guys want to come over for dinner? You're more than welcome.
All right.
Oh, one thing. Did you get up and deal with the toddler a minute ago?
No, he went.
That was me. I'm the toddler when it comes to.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, you didn't put that toddler on your list at all. And I'm like, I have a few thoughts on
me.
You're a very well behaved, quiet toddler.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, you guys are doing really incredible things. You should be proud of yourselves already. I'm really excited about where this is going to go, and please keep us in the loop.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a true offer to come out and have dinner with us. We'd love it.
Yes.
So.
Oh,
awesome.
We're in. I'm telling you.
Guys.
And we will get you your write-up and information, all of these details and links and everything we talked about, and prioritize that list for you in the way that we think that prioritization makes sense.
Okay, great. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
And you're welcome to look at it and say, nah, we're going to do it.
Forget that.
Yeah.
That's not my responsibility. That's on you.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, y'all. Have a great one.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.